Hey, good afternoon. Welcome for joining us. If you've attended one of these sessions before, you'll notice some slight differences, whereby we don't have a whizzy PowerPoint presentation, and you can see us too. So if you're returning, welcome. If you're new, thank you for attending this, your first session. The ZDL Group are changing the way that we do our webinars, where we're trying to make these a little bit more interactive, a little bit more informative, and a little bit more human, shall we say. This particular topic is around artificial intelligence, and specifically around 42001 and any other ISO standard that actually plays a part within it. I'm Daniel Wood, the Group CISO here at the ZDL Group, and I'm delighted today to be joined by my colleague, Steve.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Steve Giancardi. I'm the Senior Information Security Manager here at ZDL Group. Thanks, Dan.
Brilliant, no problem at all. So we'll start with a little bit of oversight in regards to AI management systems, etc. Because I think what Steve and I did when we were researching this was come across lots of garbled messages, lots of different information, lots of companies advising that, hey, come and work with us for 15 minutes and we'll get you an ISO 42001 certificate and all those wonderful things that come with going down a management system certification route. And Steve and I were looking at some of these and we thought, this is AI. There's got to be more to this. So we started. Well, I guess in a way we opened Pandora's box in a way, didn't we, Steve? Because
let's be honest, Dan. This is the reason we don't have a set of slides.
Well, true, absolutely true, absolutely true. And let's draw on that right now, because the reason we don't is because we started trying to put this together in our traditional webinar manner, where we present a slide and we talk you through the slide and everything else. And the slides we started putting together that explained it very, very well were just so complex and have so many sub-slides and this slide equals that slide. We just thought, you know what? Let's take it back to basics and let's just talk to you guys and let's just grab some questions from you guys on what your experiences are or how you could potentially provide us with some insight or ask us questions about AI itself, or 2001, or whatever journey you're taking within the management system world itself. So supporting us on the call, we have a colleague who's just off camera at the moment, but we'll be monitoring the chat, and the chat's available for you to ask any questions. And at any point a question is raised, our colleague Attain will jump in and ask us that question on your behalf. So they will be answered. So getting back to the nature at hand, 42001, we were looking at it and something really highlighted immediately, Steve, with it, because it's unlike any other ISO standard, ISO framework that there is. All of the ones, certainly within the security space that Steve and I are familiar with, so 27001, 27701, 22301, the list goes on and on and on, all refer back to these 10 clauses. And the 10 clauses are very structured in a manner that they can actually be leveraged and used for a multitude of management systems. And they all, in their own specific way, mean the same thing. And then we looked at the 42001 and we thought, that's a bit different. And it is so different that the IEC ISO have actually rewritten what the 10 clauses mean. So,
well, I don't know that they've rewritten what the 10 clauses mean. I think for me, where the difference between ISO 42001 and ISO 27001, for example, is that 27001 sort of like applies to the organization as a whole, whereas 42001 applies specifically to the AI component that you as an organization are providing and delivering to either a third party or for use within your own environment. And I think that's really where the difference came. And I think for me, it was the realization that when you think about 27001, you've got the 27002 standard that underpins it, which gives you a list of possible controls that you can use to secure your organisation, to secure the CIA. When you then open the door to 42001, and I'm going to put my hand up and say that I went into 42001 with a 27001 head on my shoulders and ran at it and said, wow, it's just the same. And I ran into a brick wall, because the first thing I met was something called ISO 22989. And I'm like, what's this? And 22989 goes back a couple of years. It's like 2022, I think that one was brought out. And 22989 is the one that defines, so it's basically the 27002 for 42001, because it defines artificial intelligence concepts and terminology.
Right. Okay.
And that meant that, so is this really where we should be starting when we're talking about ISO 42001? Should we be starting with 22989?
So the journey doesn't start with looking at 42001, I think is what
I don't believe.
And that's why I put him on the call, guys. Because I would have, and again, like many of us out there, and like many of the webinars and the other the press releases that we've read, samples 42001 and says, hey, it's just like anything else, and clearly it's not. So 22989 then, Steve, is another ISO standard, and it's certainly one that you believe starts the journey because it goes back to more of a traditional framework that we know and are familiar with. Now you're looking at me like that, you're looking there like, no, wait, because it doesn't. So well, enlighten us. What's?
No, it doesn't, because what 22989 does is 22989 defines the concepts and defines what you need to, what 42001 is going to secure. So for example, you've got terms related to neural networks, terms related to trustworthiness, terms related to neural language processing and related to computer vision, because you then have to understand that what they're trying to do with 42001 is broader than just the company down the road that makes porcelain furniture or whatever it is, right? What they're looking at is where we're getting AI is basically we're getting it in our vehicles, we're getting it in our phones, we're getting it in our cookers, in our toasters. So wherever artificial intelligence is being deployed, so wherever there's a smart device, 42001 should be the certification that goes alongside that smart device. However, you then have to understand and make sure that you've got the terminology right and that you're focusing on the right areas. And this is where 22989 comes in, because 22989 sets down the definitions and the frameworks that you should be working towards, and it gives you the areas that you need to assess for risk underneath the older standard of 3100 to do your risk management. But this is where, when you then open the box for 42001, you take a step back and you go, well, wait a minute, because there seems to be a whole bunch of different areas here looking around the risk thing.
And that's why we didn't put this on a slide, right? Because you try explaining that on a slide. But anyway, so Steve, what we're saying is that 42001 is not as simple as just going out there and getting a certificate saying, we've got an AI management system.
Well, perhaps it could be if you have been following the footsteps that have been laid down by 22989. If you have gone out there and you have approached it from a really secure, because I was talking to Declan earlier this morning, and Declan said, you know what, Steve, he said, the way I always look at this, the way I understand 42001, he said, it's secure DevSecOps on steroids, and that kind of really brought it home.
Yeah. Because
one of the things that ISO 42001 looks at, it looks at basically your policies, your procedures, and your guidelines around your AI ecosystem, and right. You then have to identify your risks and your responses at all of the different levels. So you've got 3 or 4 different levels that you really have to be working on. You've got your design and development level, you've got your hardware, your technology that it sits on level, you've got your governance structure and framework that sits over the top and should be managing those two, and then right at the top of the tree you've got the people that are responsible, so you've got the business process risk. So there's then kind of different layers, and this is where it all gets exciting.
All gets exciting. I love it. I think it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant. So
sorry.
So no, that's good, because what I think we're effectively advising the people of here is that you've really got to understand what 42001 is and what your usage of AI is before you go out and go down a route of certification for 42001. And like what Steve has just mentioned, the journey starts way before that. Now, 31000, 3100, 31,000. Do you know what? We've got so many different ones out there, Steve.
Yeah, it's risk management.
It is. It's risk management, and quantifying risk is what almost underpins 42001, but from an AI viewpoint.
100%.
Okay, so for the average company out there that wants to evidence that they manage AI within their organizations effectively, 42001 might not be the right way forward for them, because from what you're telling me, this seems to be more integrated into businesses that actually deliver AI systems as their core business product, rather than just us sitting in an office somewhere and using, dare I say it, ChatGPT or Gemini or something else to help us with the delivery of a report or something else. So it boils down to how a business uses AI, on whether 42001 is appropriate for them to take down a management system journey.
And I think really that's where the context of the organisation for 42001 actually defines that really clearly, because the key takeaway for me is that under the context in clause 4, because if you think about the context of the organisation from 27001, that's talking about the organisation as a whole and its context and how it interacts within the environment. Within 42001, the context is specific. It's about considering the intended purpose of the AI system or systems that are, and here we go, that are developed, provided or used by the organisation. And for me, I feel that 42001 is what I would term as the SMART certification, the SMART certification.
Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, you mentioned three things there, and that is the inclusive bit there, which I think is probably the grey area of where my understanding was. And before the webinar, we were chatting about this, and we almost whiteboarded something. Well, we did whiteboard something earlier where we were trying to discuss, and I was trying to learn more about this. And the use bit of AI, I think I got stuck on to say, well, how does the use from just any Joe Blogs company out there differ from what 42001 is there to actually support and wrap itself around? Now, having an ethical use policy, an ethical AI use policy, which many companies have had, and that's their first, really their first dipping the toe in the water to try and govern with inside organizations how AI is used. You know, use it in an unbiased manner, make sure that you've always got human eyes on to the output of AI. Certainly if you use open source AI, even paid AI services. So, but what we're saying here is that that's a good foundation, but it wouldn't necessarily mean that you need to then go out and get a 42001 certificate to prove to your clients that you're using AI effectively.
I would agree with that, because the more I look into and try to understand where 42001 sits, I see it as being the certification for, say for example, you're a company that produces smart meters for homes. Now, smart meters for homes rely on AI to be able to determine when they can get electricity at the best price for you, the consumer. So in that instance, you have an organization that's creating a device that uses AI. So under the context of the organization, this would be an organization which has a system that's developed, provided, or used by the organisation. The AI is used within the product, and if that product was 42001 certified, I would be more inclined to purchase a 42001 AI certified product than a non-42001 certified product, if you get
Yes, no, I do.
Because what that's telling me is that the proper risk processes have been followed, the proper checks and balances have been put in place for the company to be able to release to market this product with this certification, with this ISO standard, supporting it underneath, to say that everything in the background, the same way when we look at 27001 companies, we know that their data management processes are up to snuff. When we look talking about 42001, we're now understanding that the development life cycle for the AI that is used within that product or service has been certified.
Okay, all right.
And I think that's where we can leave it.
I'm sure there's still loads more to. There we go. 15 minutes done, guys. Thank you very much. No, okay. Look, I get it, and again, we're all learning about AI at the moment, and actually, I had an interesting, I'll call it interesting, Steve, an interesting conversation with a fellow CISO of mine when, and this was about 18 months ago, and he was doing a white paper or you know, a board strategy document to his board, and he asked me what I see as trending risks. Bearing in mind this was kind of last May, and what's future risk. And I actually placed AI as back then a current trending risk, and he argued that actually it's not, it's a future risk. And we argued the point, albeit over a glass of wine, with no fisticuffs involved, which was nice. And my argument was that AI, when we first started using it, was a bigger risk because we didn't really know what it was. And now that we're starting to know and understand it, is probably why now we are seeing, and probably why 42001 has come to light even further now, because like you said, 22989 has been around for a couple of years, but nobody's really waved their flag and said, hey, guess what? We've got an AI management system certification already. I don't even know if you can get certified like 22989.
It's not a very catchy name.
It's not. It doesn't really flow off the tongue. I mean, 27,001, 42,001. It's not 22. No. It doesn't. You're right. And my argument was that it was riskier when we didn't know what it was and how it could impact us than it is now, because we've educated ourselves more on AI and what the risks are behind it. And I guess that's what's underpinning 42001. Knowing, understanding and managing the risks of development, the risks of use, and the risks of the systems, or the risks that we use for the systems, and to really know and understand what AI is and where it's going. Steve, I'm going to ask you: is 42001 a standalone ISO cert that you can get similar to 27001, or is it best integrated, in your opinion, into another management system where it's just another suite of controls?
Well, that's a heavy question. That's not really one that I am properly qualified to answer, but it is clearly being put out there as a standalone system, a standalone certification specifically for AI, for AI. For what did it say in the context?
Go on. We're testing now.
Because the organisation should consider the intended purposes. So this is clearly a certification standard for AI systems that are developed, provided, or used by an organisation. So if you're developing smart meters, if you're developing cars, for example, Tesla should be going for 42001, or anybody else who's using stuff. Makes me wonder whether Alexa's 42001.
Don't say that too loudly, Steve, because we'll have more going off around us. Yeah.
but it makes you wonder. And so for me, it's like, where was 42001 going? And what it was really trying to do, as far as I can tell, is make sure that there's a proper policy procedure framework that underpins the whole development life cycle around AI. And to come to your point about your conversation with risk, what really are the risks with AI? For me, the risks are what we put into it and how we protect what we expose to those engines. But I don't know, what risks are you?
Well, again, I think you're right. I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's more at the moment, for what we know it is, it's more around how we use it within the workplace. And I think 42001 is probably not aimed at that. I think that's more aimed, like you said, as the manufacturers of those that smart kind of environment, whether it be your Tesla cars, your Alexa services, your algorithm-based data input kind of informational systems that are out there that people want to know about. The output, is it safe? So yeah, I mean, risk back to that is very much, for me, the ethical use of it and making sure that individuals don't put company or personal details into certainly the open source ones like your ChatGPTs. I mean, if you want to know if any of your information in your organisation is exposed to AI, how do we check that? Do we just ask it? Just ask it. Well, again, what you're then doing is putting in your company name, in which case you're going against your internal policy. But how else would you check? So I think those what we've determined is that there's a lot of, and I don't want to say ambulance chasing because I think that's the wrong phrase, Steve. But there's a lot of people shouting AI management system this, AI management system that, and for me, this is pinpointed at those, like you say, those companies that are not just using it to help support a process, but really the ones that are delivering AI services to other business-to-business clients. And those businesses that are purchasing that are looking, I guess, leveraging 27001 supply chain to make sure that they have certain certificates.
But it's also us as the consumers who need to benefit from this good governance around the development of AI. So it isn't just about B2B. It is also a huge component of it is B2C, because consumers are probably going to be exposed to AI in a far greater extent than companies are. Because if you think about our mobile phones, about the data that we're collecting on the mobile phones, about how that data is used to feed us with adverts, which is all algorithm based, which in a sense is exactly what AI is. So this is where we have to make sure that the principles of trustworthiness, which were defined in ISO 22989, are applied. And this is what 42001 does. It goes in to check that those principles are applied. And the principles of trustworthiness, just for completeness, is that the AI system has to be, and you know I'm reading it because I've got it down in front of me, but the AI system has to be unbiased, it has to be resilient, it has to be explainable, it has to be transparent, and it has to be able to perform. So performance, so unbiased, resilient, explainable, transparent, and performance, which is your basis for trustworthiness. And there's some really interesting case studies from past attempts to roll out AI. There was a case, I think it was about 2016, where the big finance giant BlackRock were implementing an AI.
It was an algorithm to support their internal processes.
Correct. And they had to scrap it because they were unable to explain how it came up with the results that it came up with to their senior management team. So it ultimately failed the transparency or the explainability key for trustworthiness.
So these guys built and developed this, or some very intelligent people built and developed, and they bought this, or whatever it may have been. But because they built and developed it, but didn't really understand,
well, they couldn't explain how it
delivered the results
to the results that it got. So when the senior management team then said to the people as they were presenting, well, how did you figure that out? they were unable to tell them, which means that it's failed the trustworthiness principle of explainability.
Right.
Because you have to be able to explain the output from your AI source.
Understood. Okay. Right. Wow.
I was just thinking while we were talking, I glibly mentioned Alexa getting 42001, and I think a couple of years ago, didn't Echo send a conversation that it heard to somebody?
You may have been right. Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember. Yes. Yes. So again, explain that one.
You can't, can you?
No,
because
not.
that's a performance issue as far as I can tell, because it's not performing as it was expected or was planned to perform. So again, it failed the trustworthiness principles that have been put in there by 42001, and those principles that were defined in 22989.
Okay. And if only they'd followed that one first.
You know,
Or even 3,100,000. Look, I think there's the way we were going to do some PowerPoint slides and everything else, and we were saying to Steve, let's take this webinar like it's come Christmas time. There's a big ball of lights that's just entwined, and every year you fold them away nicely, and every year when you store them, the Christmas lights, they end up being a big ball. And what we started to unravel was what we unboxed with 42001 and say, hey, we'll tell you how to get certified for it. We're absolutely not telling you how to do that. What we're trying to do is unpick the ball of Christmas lights. And as we started to unravel it, what we found was that it's just not as simple as it transpires. So if you use AI within your organisation, start with a decent AI policy, ethical use policy, put in specific controls. 42001 is very much focused around the risks, and as Steve said, the risk around trustworthiness, transparency, and a number of others there. A lot of these are not going to apply to you as organisations unless you are a manufacturer of AI systems. So before you commit internally to your business to say, hey, look, we'd love to go down and get a 42001 certificate to say we do AI management systems. Well, really research on what it means for your organisation, what it means for you, because the chances are most of this won't apply. And actually what may apply is the 22989, or certainly some controls within it, that as more of a standard management system to what we know and love with ISO, the 10 clauses, there are controls that you can take out of that particular management system and actually place into some of your existing frameworks that you already have. And that will probably serve more of a purpose to those that are delivering your certificate, or those that you need to prove that you ethically use AI, a lot more than what 42001 will. I'd imagine going down this path, like we do with all ISOs, it's time consuming, and it's not always as easy trying to, again, unravel the ball of Christmas lights. What we'll do, I'm just having a look now. I don't think there's been any questions at the moment, Steve, but any kind of anything else to add on this? Because whilst this was a 42001 kind of introductory to it, I think what we're saying is don't do it.
No, I would not say that at all. I would say go for it 100%, because, but you have to understand, is it right for you as an organisation? Because what we haven't really discussed here, Dan, is we haven't really talked about the way that that the standard looks at risk at those 4 levels. We've very briefly sort of mentioned it, but and I've alluded to it as being DevSecOps on steroids. But we have these different things. We have these different levels of risk. We have design risk, data risk, algorithmic risk, and performance risk, and all of these which tie down into, again, you need to have those trustworthiness principles underlying each and every one of those. So around the design risk, we have to say, what exactly is it that we're designing and developing this AI machine to do? And what sort of AI is it? And this is where we refer back now to 22989 to make sure that we understand whether we're developing ourselves a neural network, a large language model, whichever type of AI device we're putting together. We then look at what it is we want it to do, what we want it to achieve. How is it going to do that? Where's it going to get the data from? We then have to understand what those data sources are. How do we verify that data? What controls are we putting in place to maintain that data? What risks are there around that data acquisition and that data preparation for it to be ingested into the algorithm? And then once we're moving it into the algorithm, what's the model selection that we've decided that this framework is going to be using? What are the risks we have within using this model? And then how do we validate the output from that model? So we've got all of that sort of what's termed as algorithm risk. And then at the other end of that, you've got the performance risk. So we've talked about the model, how we're now deploying that model, what's changing, what is there going on around it, how are we monitoring it, how are we sure that the output that we're getting is correct so that we're not producing biased information. Who was it? Was it Microsoft who had a chat bot that they put out that started to tweet on Twitter that had to be pulled because it was skewed and started to put out a lot of racial statements? And so again, you've got to make sure that you've got all of these checks and balances in place. And all of this comes under the banner of the model lifecycle, which again is defined and specified in 42001. But that's just for the AI itself. You've then got another layer of risk, which is called the technology risk, which is where you're looking at the third-party platforms, you're looking at the software, you're looking at the algorithms that are sitting underneath it, you're looking at your infrastructure, and this is where it goes back to become similar to and leans into 27001, because you're now in familiar territory where you're looking at your data centers, you're understanding the physical access into and out of the data center, and you're determining how that plays into the performance of the AI machine or the AI algorithm or the AI model that you have sitting on top of that. And then again, there's another layer now above that, which is your regulations and your governance, basically. So now you've got the conduct, your compliance, your legal risk, and all of those other things. So what would happen if this machine, if this learning model started to misfire, started to do something wrong? And then right at the very top, right at in the heavens, as it were, you've got the accountability layer, really, which is the business process risk. And this is where the owners of the business need to be involved. And it's always got to be that the owners have to be involved and have to take notice and understand what's going on in their organization, specifically around the development of stuff like a smart device. Any smart device that's being created, what's happening with that data, what do we want to do with that data, where do we want to store that data, how do we want to manipulate that data, and what are we going to do with that data when we've done that? See, that's
wow. Okay. Like I said, all the Christmas lights there, Steve. Okay. Actually, you touched on something then. I want to just bring back the regulatory side of things. Now, AI has been around for a few years now. But what government's doing about it? What are those regulatory bodies doing about it? Is there anywhere in the world at the moment that are actually setting out specific controls for?
There are.
AI?
What's the UK has done it? The UK has AI guidelines. The EU published something last year, put out the AI framework. There's Singapore, Japan, China, Australia all have AI legislation. Canada, America, AI legislation. It's pretty much most countries around the world now are putting some form of legislation in place to try to control AI. But it's really the development of AI.
Right, and so again, even those regulatory controls and that legislation is more geared towards the creation of AI rather than the use of AI by us consumers.
I don't think it's really geared at the consumer level yet. Right. I think it's geared at protecting the consumers.
Okay.
as best it can.
And does 42001 or 22989, I'm going to get used to saying that by the end of this, do those frameworks, how far do those frameworks go to answering those legislations? Is it all covered? Is it, or do we just not quite, do we not know yet? Is the legislation too young? Is the management system mature enough to answer?
Going to speak to that because I don't know the legislation well enough
bigger ball of
to be able to say that this meets it or this doesn't meet
right.
it. What this does do, it says that you need to be aware of it. So you as the organisation that's developing the AI model needs to understand the legislation in the territories in which you're going to be delivering.
So a bit like you interested parties in 27001, how does your management system answer and adhere to? So that's the connectivity point. Okay, all right, okay.
And again, that's specified in the context for 42001 with the specific understanding that it's only relating to the AI system that you are developing, or the AI system or process development.
Or yes, yeah.
In the product you are delivering to market.
Okay.
That's the phrase I should be using, delivering
to
market.
market. I like that one.
Yeah.
I like that one. Brilliant. Okay. Well, look, we are conscious of everybody's time that's on the call at the moment, and thank you ever so much for attending. I think what we've unearthed in researching this is that 42001 is unlike any other management system, like any other traditional management system that we've been used to, and it is trying to unpick those Christmas light balls just before you put them on the tree. And we've unearthed some quite interesting things. I mean, we didn't even delve into if there's any crossover or what our colleagues in ISO world over in the US is doing in the wonderful NIST area.
Well, there is the NIST AI governance framework.
That's been released more or less at the same time as this, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So again, I think I wonder like if 27001 and NIST CSF are coming together. I wonder if these two I wonder if there's any collaboration out there. That's what we'd like to see, Steve, isn't it? A bit of NIST ISO collaboration and maybe just one certificate for both. That'd be nice.
That would be useful.
There we go. So look, I actually find this format and what Steve's been talking about, I've actually learned something off the back of this today, and that is you've got to look at this without blinkers on. It's probably certainly more intuitive and probably more in depth than what when we were researching this, what we found some informational gathering to be. It was it's easy. I don't think any ISO cert is easy if you go into it with blinkers on or with your eyes closed.
I think personally, to me, this is a different standard because this is almost like trying to put a stand. It's almost like, you know, the old phrase herding cats. This is almost what it feels like to me, because when you think about how AI works, what AI does, because at the end of the day, right, all it really is data. It's a bunch of data, and then it's making decisions based on pieces of that data.
Yeah.
Therefore, the controls that you have to have in place are looking to understand how that algorithm has come to make those decisions. And what this standard is trying to do is make sure that there is transparency, that there's explainability, making sure that there's almost control around how those AI machines, how those AI algorithms are working. And it's also making sure that there's accountability. And in true ISO fashion, it's putting accountability right at the top in the C-suite.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that is right. Again, going back to your BlackRock example, is it BlackRock? You said BlackRock example.
Yeah.
When those accountable ask the questions, and those questions weren't, that's effective accountability.
Very good.
We're stopping this now because if us being accountable don't understand it, we're not going to be held accountable for it.
Correct.
And that's where management systems work perfect, as long as they're adhered to. Okay. Steve, just before we let these good people get on with their day, any kind of final thoughts? Any words of wisdom to take away?
Words of wisdom.
I know it's a long stretch.
Especially for me, I can waffle all day long, but provide you with words of wisdom, I'm not so sure. I think that if I were to say anything, I would just say that ISO 42001, it's there to offer a guideline for managing the safety and security risks that come with AI systems. And I think for me, key things to consider are data security, making sure that the data that's feeding the AI is protected, system integrity, so ensure that the AI cannot be tampered with, and ethical AI, ensure that it's used responsibly and does not infringe on people's rights or freedoms.
I think if there's a takeaway for me is that ethical use and making sure that what you get out of it, you absolutely use human eyes to review it, to validate.
I suppose to wrap it up, I suppose I think what I'd like everybody to sort of think about is that ISO 42001 is responsible for AI management. That's what ISO 42001 is. It's the certification for AI management. It's supported by ISO 22989, which provides the terms, the concepts, and is needed that you need to understand AI. And internally, that is supported by ISO 31000, which helps you to manage risk to ensure that AI is used wisely.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I can't say fairer than that. Thank you, Steve.
Yes, sir.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Sorry for waffling on, but this is super exciting. I think it's an exciting time to be working in security because we're going to be facing challenges with AI coming up. And it's like things like 42001, like you say, Dan, it was like lifted the box and whoa. Brilliant.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. We'll be back again. We're just off to have a haircut. So I had to throw that in. We'll be speaking to you and seeing you all soon. If you do have any questions that you've been unable to ask today, please reach out to us at the ZDL Group and visit our website to go on and find where we can support you. Not just with this, but for a plethora of other things. With that, we bid you farewell and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Goodbye.